What's up guys, it's Cal, and in this video I'll be showing you Enhancement Shamans on the Battle for Azeroth beta. We'll be going through the changes to their baseline abilities and passives, as well as their talents and PvP talents. And there are quite a bit of changes. Now just like my other overview videos, this video isn't meant to tell you which talents to pick for the best DPS, or if Enhancement is better than Elemental at DPS. This is merely to show you what's to come. So, let's get started. So here are all the baseline abilities for Enhancement Shamans. Let's start off with Ancestral Spirit. It is their res. All Shamans have this, of course. You can res any target while not in combat to 35% health and mana, so not changed at all. Cleanse Spirit is unchanged, 8-second cooldown, cures all curse effects from the friendly target, so not changed. Healing Surge is their normal heal. It is not changed. It can also consume 20 Maelstrom if it's available to be instant cast. Astral Shift is not changed, 1.5 minute cooldown. You shift partially into the elemental planes, taking 40% less damage for 8 seconds. Remember, you won't have your artifact weapons anymore, so Astral Shift will no longer heal you. Then we have Crash Lightning, which has an extra effect to it. So going over what it already has on live, still costs 20 Maelstrom, still has a cooldown around 6-ish seconds based off your haste, electrocutes all enemies in front of you, dealing some nature damage, hitting 2 or more targets, enhances your weapons for 10 seconds, causing Storm Strike and Lava Lash to also deal some nature damage to all targets in front of you. So that's not changed. Then the second effect of it, each target hit by Crash Lightning increases the damage of your next Storm Strike by 5%. Now that effect used to be on your artifact weapon. It was called Gathering Storms, except that 5% was 8%, so they brought it down to 5% and just put it baseline into Crash Lightning. Then the Spirit Walk is unchanged, 1 minute cooldown, increases your movement speed by 60% for 8 seconds, and takes off all movement impairing effects. Feral Spirits is unchanged, DPS cooldown, 2 minute cooldown. You summon your spirit wolves and they fight with you for 15 seconds and they're immune to all movement impairing effects, and they grant you 5 Maelstrom each time they attack. Earthbind Totem is unchanged, 30-second cooldown. You put it down, everyone around you gets slowed, all enemies. Tremor Totem is returning, so this was actually removed in Legion, and now they brought it back. It does the exact same thing as before, 1 minute cooldown. It's an earth totem, you put it down, and it removes all fears, charms, and sheep effects from any party array member within 30 yards. Now here's Capacitor Totem. So Capacitor Totem is now baseline. This was an ability before Legion, and then they turned it into a talent in Legion called Lightning Surge Totem, which did the exact same thing, and then they just turned it back into a Capacitor Totem for BFA, and it's baseline. So yeah, the only change to it, I guess, is that its cooldown is going from 45 seconds up to 1 minute. But it does the same thing. It stuns all targets within 8 yards for 3 seconds. After 2 seconds, you know, the Capacitor Totem goes off after 2 seconds. Then there's Water Walking is unchanged. Put it on friendly target, they can walk on water for 10 minutes. Astral Recall is also unchanged. 10 minute cooldown, it is like a second Hearth. Then there's Flame Tongue. The only change to Flame Tongue is that it has a 20-yard range, which is up from 10-yard range. In fact, a few of these abilities are going to have that same change to it, so you can now use it from further away. It still does the same thing though. Its effect, it has a cooldown based off your haste, scorches your target dealing fire damage, and enhances your weapon with fire for 16 seconds, causing each weapon attack to deal more fire damage. Rockbiter, same thing as before, has a 20-yard range up from 10-yard. Effect is still the same. It has a cooldown based off of your haste, short cooldown, assaults your target with earth and power, dealing nature damage, and it still generates 25 Maelstrom, still has 2 charges. And then same thing with Frostbrand, its range has been increased from 10 yards to 20 yards, and it does the same thing, costs 20 Maelstrom, chills your target dealing frost damage, and applying Frostbrand to them, reducing their movement speed by 50% for 3 seconds, enhances your weapon for 16 seconds, causing your attacks to apply Frostbrand. Then we have Lava Lash. So only change to Lava Lash is it's going up from costing 30 Maelstrom to 40 Maelstrom. So it costs 30 on live, now it costs 40 in BFA. And it charges your offhand weapon with lava and burns your target, dealing fire damage. So the effect is the same. And then there is Lightning Bolt, which is unchanged. It's just like a filler move, causes nature damage, you know what Lightning Bolt does. And then Storm Strike, only change to Storm Strike is its Maelstrom is going down from 40 Maelstrom to 30. So I guess they kind of switched Lava Lash and Storm Strike. Its effect is still the same. Has a cooldown based off your haste, energizes both your weapon with lightning, and delivers a massive blow to your targets, dealing a total of some physical damage. Then there's Wind Shear, unchanged, 12-second cooldown. It is your interrupt. Purge is also unchanged. You can purge a beneficial magic effect from the target. Instant all that. Hex is also unchanged, 30-second cooldown. You can turn an enemy into a frog. Only humanoids and beasts though, for 30 seconds, Ghost Wolf, also unchanged. It increases your movement speed by 30%, and you cannot be slowed below 100%. Now, Earth Elemental is actually returning to Enhancement Shaman. So I believe that they had this before Legion, but then in Legion it became exclusive to Elemental. So now Enhancement has it. And it does the same thing as it does in Elemental. 5-minute cooldown calls forth a greater Earth Elemental. It's kind of used as a tanking thing, but it can be used in DPS scenarios because why not? Farsight is unchanged. You can look at a far distance away from you for 1 minute. Unlimited range. Heroism, obviously unchanged. 5-minute cooldown increases everyone in your party or raids. Haste by 30% for 40 seconds and then applies exhaustion and all that stuff. Now let's take a look at the passive abilities. So most of these are unchanged. There's only like 1 or 2 things that are changed. Maelstrom weapon is not changed. Your auto attacks and Wind Fury attacks generate 5. Maelstrom, your mastery, is also unchanged. Increases the chance to trigger Stormbringer and Wind Fury by 1 point something-ish percent depending on your mastery. Increases all fire, frost, and nature damage you deal by 48.5%. Reincarnation is of course unchanged. You can res yourself every 30 minutes up to 20% of your health. And then Stormbringer was actually just changed slightly. So your weapon attacks have a 6-ish point something percent chance, depending on your mastery, to reset the remaining cooldown on Stormstrike, and causes your next Stormstrike to deal 25% increased damage. That part is new, and then costs 100% less Maelstrom. On live, that is a 50% less Maelstrom. And it triggers no cooldown, which is the same on live. So Stormbringer was buffed, which is nice. And then Wind Fury is unchanged. Each of your main hand attacks has a 26% chance to trigger 2 extra attacks, dealing some physical damage each. And then Stormlash, which was a nifty ability that helped your raid out, is no longer a thing. Got rid of Stormlash. Now, just in case anyone is curious, this is what the new Earth Elemental looks like. I think it looks really cool, just in case you want to see that. Anyways, now let's talk about the talents, and then I'll also go over the PvP talents in case you care about those. And the talents do have a significant amount of changes, whereas on Elemental there were a lot of changes, but it was a lot of shifting around in Enhancement. It's kind of just a lot of changes all around. So for the first tier, Boulder Fist was moved all the way up to here from the last tier. And it's unchanged. So Rockbiter's recharge time is reduced by 15% and it deals 20% increased damage. So unchanged besides the fact that it's moved all the way up here. Hot Hands is not changed at all. Melee attacks with a Flame Tongue active have a chance to make your next Lava Lash cost no Maelstrom and deal 100% increased damage. And then Lightning Shield was moved all the way up to this tier and it was changed. So it was actually buffed, I believe. So surround yourself with a Shield of Lightning for 1 hour. Melee attackers have a chance to suffer some nature damage and add an extra charge to your shield. When you Stormstrike, it gains 2 charges, and then at 20 charges, the shield overcharges, causing you to deal 440 some nature damage with each attack and generates 100 Maelstrom over 10 seconds. So I feel like that's a pretty good buff to Lightning Shield. Now let's look at the level 30 tier. So Landslide was moved down a tier and it was changed. So this used to have a chance to increase your agility by 8%, but what it does in BFA is Rockbiter has a 20% chance to increase the damage of your next Stormstrike by 100%. And then we have Forceful Winds, which is new, but this seems like a mix of 2 of your artifact abilities. Obviously we won't have artifacts anymore, but it seems like a mix of Doom Winds and Winds of Change artifact abilities, but just changed a bit. Anyways, what it does is its passive Wind Fury causes each successful Wind Fury attack within 15 seconds to increase the damage of Wind Fury by 100% and the Maelstrom generated by 1, and that stacks up to 5 times. And then Totem Mastery, which is new to Enhancement. So this used to just be an elemental talent. Now Enhancement's got it as well. And what it does is it places 4 totems down for 2 minutes that increase your combat capabilities. It puts down a Resonance Totem, which generates you 1 Maelstrom every second. Puts down a Storm Totem, which increases the damage of Stormstrike by 5%. Puts down an Ember Totem, increases Lava Lash damage by 10%. And then puts down a Tailwind Totem, which increases your chance to trigger Wind Fury by 2%. So it's a pretty nifty ability. Then the level 45 tier. So Spirit Wolf is new. While transformed into a Ghost Wolf, you gain 5% increased movement speed and 5% damage reduction every 1 second, stacking up to 4 times. So, nifty ability right there. And then Earth Shield, which is new to Enhancement. So this used to be like a Resto ability, and then it was a Resto Honor talent. Now all Shaman specs have it, like even Elemental has it. And what it does is it protects the target, so you can put on friendly target, with an Earthen Shield, increasing your healing on them by 10% and healing them for some amount when they take damage. And has 9 charges. This heal can occur once every few seconds, and then Earth Shield can only be placed on 1 target at a time. And then there's Static Charge, which is new because Capacitor Totem is baseline. So this reduces the cooldown of Capacitor Totem by 5 seconds for each enemy it stuns, up to a maximum of 20 seconds reduction. So Capacitor Totem already has a 1 minute cooldown, and that will go down to 40 seconds if you so happen to stun a bunch of targets. Then the level 60 tier, Searing Assault is new. So it's a passive. Flame Tongue now causes the target to burn for some fire damage over 6 seconds. Hailstorm is unchanged. Passive. Frostbrand now also enhances your weapon damage, causing each of your weapon attacks to also deal some frost damage. And then Overcharge, which had a slight nerf to it, and it was also moved up a tier. So Lightning Bolt now consumes up to 40 Maelstrom for up to 1200% increased damage. On live, that's 1500 increased damage, but it has a 11 point something second cooldown based off your haste. Then for the level 75 tier, Nature's Guardian is returning. So this is actually removed in Legion. And what it does is it's passive. When your health is brought to below 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your max health. And this can't occur more than once every 45 seconds. And then there's Feral Lunge, which has just moved down a few tiers, but it's unchanged. 30-second cooldown, you lunge at your target as a ghostly wolf, biting them, dealing physical damage. And then there's Windrush Totem, which is unchanged. It was just moved down a few tiers. 2-minute cooldown, you place the totem down on the ground. Anyone within 10 yards of it has their movement speed increased by 60% for 5 seconds. Then the level 90 tier, which for the most part is actually unchanged. There just is like one small change to it. But anyways, Crashing Storm is unchanged. It's a passive. Crash Lightning also electrifies the ground, leaving an electrified field behind which damages enemies within it for nature damage over 6 seconds. Fury of Air, unchanged, costs 3 Maelstrom, plus 3 every second, and it creates a vortex of wind with 8 yards around you, dealing nature damage every 1 second to enemies caught in the storm, and slows them for 30% for 3 seconds. And then there's Sundering, which just had some rewording to it, but I believe it's relatively unchanged. So it still costs 20 Maelstrom, still has a 40-second cooldown. It shatters a line of earth in front of you with your main hand weapon, causing flame strike damage and incapacitating any enemy hit for 2 seconds. So it's pretty much unchanged. So now Elemental Spirits. This has a kind of a 2-part effect to it, and the second part probably sounds familiar. So Elemental Spirits as a whole is new. So the first part of it reduces the cooldown of Feral Spirits by 30 seconds. Is a new effect, which is nice, but then the second effect, which causes your feral spirits to be imbued with fire, frost, or lightning, and enhances your abilities, is the same as the Doom Wolves artifact trait. So they baked that trait into this talent. Then there's Earth Spike, which had a little nerf to it. Still costs 20 Maelstrom, still has a 20-second cooldown. Summons an Earthen Spike under an enemy, dealing some physical damage and increasing physical and nature damage you deal to the target by 20% for 10 seconds. On live, that's 30%. So they brought the 30% down to 20%. And then Ascendance, just a small change to it. Still a 3-minute cooldown. You transform into an Air Ascendant for 15 seconds, and it will reduce the cooldown and cost of Storm Strike by 66%. On live, that's 80%. So they just brought that down to 66, and transforms your auto attacks and Storm Strike into wind attacks, which bypass armor and has a 30-yard range. So there you have it. Those are all the talents. Now let's talk about the PvP talents. So as far as PvP talents go, if you don't know how they work in BFA, this is how they will work. You have 4 bubbles here. This first bubble is the same for all classes and all specs. It has Gladiator's Medallion, Adaptation, Relentless. They're the same as on live. They're unchanged. They're all on the first tier. You get to pick between one of any of these 3 in BFA. And then these next 3 bubbles are a giant pool of your already existing PvP talents. So as you see, it's no longer on a tier system. It's on this giant pool system that you can pick 3 that you want. So 3 that you might really like on live that are on the same tier, you can pick all 3 of them in BFA, except they did prune a few of them off. But as far as changes go for these, none of them have actually been changed. There's just one new talent, which I'll go over, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the names of them. I'm going to mouse over them. If you want to know what they do, you can pause the video, or you can look at your Enhancement Shaman. But for the one that was added, I will, of course, go over what it is. So we have Forked Lightning, Static Cling, Ride the Lightning, Shamanism, Thunder Charge, Ethereal Form, Sky Fury Totem, Counter-Strike Totem, Purifying Waters, Spectral Recovery. Then there's Grounding Totem, which Grounding Totem used to only be a Resto PvP talent. Now Enhancement has it, also Elemental has it. And what it does is a 30-second cooldown, summons an Air Totem with 5 health at the feet of the caster that will redirect all harmful spells cast on nearby party or raid members to itself. It will not redirect any AoE effects, and it lasts for 3 seconds. And then there's Swelling Waves, which is unchanged. Yeah. So those are all the PvP talents, as well as all the normal talents. And there you have it, all the changes to Enhancement Shamans in Battle for Azeroth. And these changes will be going into effect in mid-July, so probably July 17th if I were to guess. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you like these changes, or do you hate them? I'd like to know in the comments below. But if you guys enjoyed this video, then you can leave a like on it, you can sub to the channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.